Good evening. Good evening. I'll call the April 9th, 2024 Bermuda Run Town Council meeting to order. Just as a reminder, please make sure you silence your phones. Are you able to hear me back there? No?
No,
Okay.
please turn up your microphone.
He'll control it over there, but thank you. How about now? Is that better?
Not really.
How about now?
It doesn't sound like it's changing.
How about now? You hear me better now? I can hear the feedback, so, okay. Thank you for letting me know that. So I want to make sure we recognize that we have a full quorum. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's the intent of the council to make solemn the proceedings of this meeting and the business brought before the governing board, to offer an opportunity for a reflective moment of silence. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Town of Bermuda Run Code of Ethics Statement. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 168-86 and 160D-109, and the Town of Bermuda Run Code of Ethics Policy adopted November 9, 2010, and further endorsed on August 9, 2022, I would ask each of you before you adopt the agenda if there is any actual, potential, or perceived conflicts of interest with respect to any matter on the proposed agenda which will come before the Town Council for a vote at this meeting tonight. If so, please speak up and let the council know this time before the agenda is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. The council has had an opportunity to review the agenda. Are there any revisions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Tedder, second by Mr. Ernst. Our show of hands, all those in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Agenda item number 6, approval of the March 12, 2024 Town Council meeting minutes. Council has had an opportunity to review the minutes. Are there any revisions?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Zeliga, second by Ms. Nelson. Show of hands. Show of hands.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. 5-0. We're going to stickler. Number 7, citizens' comments. May I have the citizens' comments as well as the public hearing sign-up sheets? Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have citizens' comment section tonight as well as 3 public hearings. The rules are the same for all of these items, and those rules are as follows: that each speaker is allowed a total of 3 minutes to speak, and she'll immediately stop when his or her 3 minutes are up. When you approach the podium, please state your name and address. The speaker will address the council as a whole and shall not ask for any verbal exchange back from the council, staff, or any of the applicants with the agenda items tonight. It's not the intent of the public comment session or the public hearing to require the council to answer any impromptu questions. There'll be no discussion between the speaker and the members of the audience, and we ask that comments be made to the council rather than to the audience. Mr. Mead will be the timekeeper on all of these matters and will inform the speaker at the 32nd time remaining spot, and then when your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. First person to speak, Dan Borland.
Good
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right then?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Greatly appreciate. And I'm probably using my time now. I wanted to remind us of the Bermuda Run sort of stated goal. Above all else, our goal is to preserve the integrity of our small town living so you can live well and just be. So these are comments in general about 1070. And we've written previous letters, and we've stated to not use the 1070 in the Yadkin Valley River watershed. And the reason is it's about the future. So the future of water and the future of our community and how that builds out literally over time. Because it's hard to tell what happens after, much time and how that goes. So we have thought that, and we very much appreciate your statement that the 1070 is a privilege granted by the council and it's not a right. And then recently there was an NCDEQ audit, and there are a few items there that could use improvement relative to how the 1070 is administered within Bermuda Run, and that may apply to Davie County. I'm a little bit unsure. And so with this in mind, I've thought that relative to 1070 considerations, that some work should be done relative to establishing guidance on how a 1070 will be used in the future within the Yadkin Valley watershed here. And one of the findings of the audit, for instance, was uncertainties relative to, I think it's the amount of acreage that's being allocated within Davie County and Bermuda Run in the, I think it's called the Winston-Salem lower area. So I've thought that Bermuda Run should carefully consider the approach to 1070, to have some guidelines, some approaches that help guide how the council would consider various points, and that it would be prudent to work on this in the future. And for instance, I noticed in one of the applications, this is not specific to that one, but for instance, would a 1070, is it appropriate for a 1070 to be used in place of pervious asphalt or not? And that's could be addressed, for instance, within guidelines versus a hearing. And overall, I think, again, I'll go back to the future, and that I have been concerned, and I would like the Bermuda Run Council to help protect the Yadkin Valley region. This region, I guess it's on the north side. I'm sorry, was that an indication of something?
30 seconds.
Pardon?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. That was my 30 second. And, because, pardon? I don't know if
Just step a little closer.
I'll talk like this. I don't know where there's a...
There you are.
Okay, thank you. Just that it is about the future, and establishing guidelines, SOPs, addressing some of the issues within the findings of the state audit would be very beneficial for this region. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bourdon. Aaron De Niro.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. At the town hall meeting last month, there was much congratulatory talk about the recently completed DEQ audit. Technically, the remarks were true. The audit was time-consuming and it was over. But I did not hear any mention about what was actually documented in the audit, and I want to take this time during the citizen comments to put that on the record. For those not familiar with the DEQ, it is the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, and their recent audit completed on February 28, 2024, specifically reviewed the program implementation, documentation, and assessment of the Water Supply Watershed Management Program of Bermuda Run. There were 8 topics reviewed for the program requirements. The findings are as followed. Topic 1, staff and funding, fail or partial fail. Topic 2, program implementation and evaluation, pass. Topic 3, keeping program ordinances up to date, fail or partial fail. Topic 4, water supply, watershed protection ordinance availability, fail or partial fail. Topic 5, survey and uploads, fail or partial fail. Topic 6, sharing responsibilities, pass. Topic 7, written procedures, fail or partial fail. Topic 8, program documentation, fail or partial fail. That's 6 out of 8 topics that the state said either failed or partially failed to meet the program requirements. Excerpts from the report include, quote, "DEQ recommends developing some type of standard operating procedure document to better identify and explain responsibilities." Quote, "Davie County and Bermuda Run will revise and update the April 27th, 2021 interlocal agreement so that it more accurately describes the division of administration and zoning responsibilities between Davie County and Bermuda Run." Quote, "Bermuda Run will be the responsible entity for the Bermuda Run Water Supply Watershed Protection Program." Quote, "Job descriptions provide some information on responsibilities associated with implementing the Water Supply Watershed Protection Program, but DEQ recommends developing additional documentation." Actionable items in the report include updating the interlocal agreement between the county and town and deliver an approved agreement back to the NCDEQ. Develop a standard operating procedure for the watershed program, a set of documents. Document the roles and responsibilities between the town and the county. And update and correct several items within the watershed section of the zoning ordinance. I have a copy of this in case you haven't had a chance to review it thoroughly. I urge the town council to review the detailed report and ensure that the procedural deficits that were outlined in the report are addressed both in letter and in spirit. This report is an indictment on the current lack of clear process, procedure, and accountability as it pertains to the watershed program in Bermuda Run. For this body to be considering two 1070 applications tonight when it's not clear that these concerns that were documented by a state agency have been addressed is not only irresponsible, it's indefensible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nero. Okay, moving on to our public hearings. Public hearing 1070 requests Davie Construction and Red 32 LLC. Will the representative for Davie Construction step forward?
Good evening, Brad Chapman. Address is 349 Riverbend Drive, Bermuda Run. But I'm also here representing Davie Construction Company and the developer. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff for hearing our request. First, would like to start by pointing out the obvious that this request is a little out of the ordinary timing cycle with the audit that was going on. And the delays in the state getting that back. We were forced to go ahead and start construction on the Caribou Coffee at 130 Peachtree Lane, which is behind the Wells Fargo, due to some deadline requirements from the tenant and the developer's agreements with those tenants. We needed to get started. And throughout the process, I had been in touch with Mr. Meadwell and some conversations about the potential for a 1070 request. So that's kind of why we're out of cycle, is the tenant deadlines and requirements. Now over to the request, on behalf of the owner, we did submit a request for roughly 0.05 acres. Those are some roundings, figures in the original packet, slightly different, but roughly 5% or 0.05 acres to allow for us to get the plan designed in accordance with the tenant's requirements and to get all the parking that they needed. Pretty much the 10 parking spots that are shown on the screen back here along the southern edge of the property, which is parallel to Peachtree, that is roughly 2,000, just under 2,000 square feet, which is what we would be requesting as watershed 1070 allocation for this request. That's pretty much a summary, simple, small amount of area needed to make the plan work. We just couldn't make it work without a little additional square footage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, if you would just stay put. So we have no one signed up for the public hearing for this item. So I think I just simply open the public hearing and then close the public hearing for documentation purposes. Is that correct? All right. So does the council, I'll open it up to council for any questions. Mr. Chapman?
I have none.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 1070 request.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Nelson, second by Mr. Tedder. Show of hands, those approved? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Apologize, I'm shuffling papers up here, so if I'm making noise in the microphone, I apologize. All right, a second public hearing. 1070 request, Hall Walker Bermuda Run Investments LLC. For the representative for the applicant, step forward to describe this request, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. My name is Amanda Hodiern. My addresses are at 804 Green Valley Road, Suite 200 in Greensboro. And I'm here tonight as the attorney representing the applicant property owners. That's Bermuda Run Investments LLC, as well as an entity affiliated with Wake Forest Baptist Health, CTR Community Physicians, who owns the other parcel. So I'm representing both of those requests. I have with me here this evening the principals and members of Bermuda Run Investments, Laurie and John Ford, as well as Brian Ford, and Mr. Robbie Short from Atrium Health. Also have with us this evening Luke Dickey from Stimmel and Associates, in case we have any design-related questions. He and his firm did the land planning and layout work for this item. So they're here at our disposal if we need them. Let's see, Mr. Meadwell, am I able to pull up my presentation here? Okay. So as we know from the mayor's opening and from your packets and the agenda, this is, of course, a 1070 permit request that we're here before you to talk about tonight. I want to take a moment before we get into all the details and substance to really think about what that is as a threshold entitlement and what that actually means. So the 1070 permit request, just bear with me a minute, it's worth repeating, is where we are asking you as the town to allocate to us part of your acreage to allow us to increase up to 70% of built-upon area or impervious area in your watershed. So what does that mean when I say threshold entitlement? What that means is it's a permissive request. Can we or can't we set this landscape in the way that we're asking tonight in order to proceed with the rest of the development sequence? So we're here at the very beginning of the process. This is a request that we need to know, is it a yes or a no, in order to do the rest of the development process, which we'll talk about later. So we're going to come back to that, but I just wanted to take a moment and highlight the fact that this is a threshold question that sets up the rest of the development sequence. So you've seen this in your packets, but just real quick, the request by the numbers, just so we all know what we're talking about. The total acreage in the parcels that are before you tonight is 66.11. That's the total parcel acreage as our survey indicates. The total acreage within the watershed of those two parcels is less than that. It's 59.54 acres. So that's 6.57 that are out of the watershed, out of this discussion. The total project area is 45 acres. So what does that mean? That means the expanse, scope, spread of the actual development area within that 66.11 acres. In other words, there's part of that parcelage that we're not touching that won't be developed, so why count it towards your 1070 permit allocation? That's the way the town is administering the rule, so that's how we've configured our application to be consistent. So what we're asking for, a total projected impervious area is 31.5 acres inside of that 45-acre project area. Looked at another way, we're asking for an impervious area in percentage of 70% of that project area of the 45 acres, or 52.52% of that total parcelage. Again, that's the 66.11. So you'll hear me talk tonight a lot about the project area because that's the area in question. So those are the numbers, that's the request. What does this look like? How might this pencil out? This is the petition required site plan that we've submitted in conformance with Chapter 10 of your ordinance, and this shows all the required items as prescribed by your ordinance. And it shows you how those numbers play out. So the heavy bold line that you see, the heavy dashed bold line, that's the parcels, that's the 66.11 acres. The red dashed line that you see is the project area. And you can see that's where we've got things going on. It's not white on your map. That's the project area, again, because that's the only area in play that the developer would actually look to do anything here. And that was mainly comprised of just the way this site lays out from a functionality standpoint and from the stream corridor. We've got an intermittent stream on this property. We're certainly not going to go within that. It should be taken off the table from square one, and that's what this indicates. So you can see here on the map, this shows the 31.5 acres that I've discussed. That's the pink that you see. And actually, it's a little bit beyond that because, of course, when you fully engineer something and get in the field, things can change, and we want to make sure that we've got enough allotment to account for that field work that happens. So that's what this map is showing you. It does show a layout that, as of right now, is the layout we're pursuing. It's our best hope and guess and anticipation of how we'd like this to go. But of course, as we talked about, this is a threshold permissive request. So we need to know if we can pursue this plan before we can fully get it permitted and approved to know if this is going to be exactly it. But we've gone ahead and based our request off of this because this is what we'd like to do. And this is what we can talk about tonight. Accompanying these numbers and this layout, the applicants, my clients, have chosen to submit several voluntary conditions along with this. As you know, this is a legislative request. It's a discretionary matter, so it's within your purview to limit your approval. And the way that we can help do that is to offer voluntary conditions and see if those would be accepted by the town as part of any approval that could be forthcoming. So I just want to go through those quickly for the record. The maximum number of dwelling units on the site shall be limited to 505. The maximum number of apartment units shall be limited to 280. So that means of that 505 maximum, only 280 of those could be multifamily. Again, these are maximums. Number 3, sidewalks shall be included along all public streets. Number 4, the developer shall construct a soft or pervious surface nature trail as part of the development. Number 5, maximum building height for multifamily buildings shall be limited to 4 stories. Number 6, maximum building height for non-residential structures shall be limited to 4 stories. Number 7, land uses shall be locationally limited as provided on the attached plan exhibit. And I'll pause there a moment to explain. The plan had a line of demarcation on it. Everything north of the line would only be single family, either attached or detached. Everything south of the line would follow the CM zoning, and you could do any permitted use in the CM zoning. That gives a commitment, a firm transparency and predictability to what type of land uses would go in what place. Next, a minimum of a 30-foot wide buffer, opaque, shall be provided between all non-residential or multifamily residential uses and single-family residential uses. So that's talking about those adjacency areas and how those are going to be treated for separation and privacy. Continuing on, we'll also install a 15-foot vegetated buffer yard along the residentially developed properties on Yadkin Valley Road. And you can see those again on the plan exhibit if we need to go back and look at that. This vegetated buffer yard shall consist of 2 deciduous trees and 8 primary evergreen plants per 100 linear feet. That's giving you a nice thick evergreen opacity there to create year-round screening. Existing trees and shrubs that are preserved may be used to satisfy the planting requirement. We don't want to get rid of any nice mature vegetation that's actually helping. And a 6-foot solid fence may be used in place of if we have areas where the vegetation isn't going to cut it or a fence would be better. This is a good condition that I want to highlight because typically I work in a lot of jurisdictions, and Bermuda Run included, screening and buffering is not required when you're doing like to like. So to do this between residential to residential is above and beyond an extra commitment we wanted to give just to provide some response to some of the concerns we've been hearing. And lastly, a minimum of 15% open space, and that's calculated using that entire parcel acreage, the 66.11, shall be provided. The open space shall be outside of the project area, so it's outside of those 45 acres for that are being included in this application, and it will include portions of that Duke Power easement that goes across the property. The only improvements allowed in the open space would be pervious. They'd be recreational, such as trails, gardens, or passive parks. And of course, if Duke Power has to put any improvements in there for its easement purposes, those would be permitted. This is condition that I also want to highlight for a moment, because what it means is that we will never come back and ask for a Phase 2 that increases this application. So when we say 45 acres is the project area, that's a firm commitment, and it's belted and suspended by this condition, because now you've got an additional commitment that has to be maintained in open space. So now that we've talked about the request, I want to go back a moment and look at how we got here. How did we come to think it might be a good idea to ask for this, and how did we come to this layout? So we actually use your planning documents when we look at things like this. We looked at your 2017 adopted comprehensive plan. This is the future land use plan map. You can see that this property circled on the map and then circled on the legend, this is to be mixed-use center. This is based on the input and the work and the study that was done by Benchmark Planning, your staff, your citizenry, your elected officials, when you did your visioning and your planning and strategic ideas for how you'd like to see Bermuda Run grow and develop. So we take that into account. We want to be consistent with that. You notice we're not asking for a land use plan amendment. We want to do what you want to see. So the mixed-use center calls for a mix of compatible commercial and residential uses in a walkable village setting. The residential uses are often higher in density, located on upper floors of mixed-use buildings. Commercial uses are typically lower intensity, retail establishments, and serve the needs of the development's residents and surrounding areas. So we took that call to action seriously and set out to develop a walkable community that had a density that was meeting with what the town wanted and that served these needs. We also looked at your zoning map, and we wanted to meet that as well. This is zoned commercial mixed, or CM, and this district is set out, we see from your ordinance, to be retail, services, offices, and civic uses essential to everyday needs of town residents. Residential uses are often found here, may be dispersed among the commercial uses as part of mixed-use buildings or multifamily residential development. So we took both of those guiding documents into account when we looked at this property and did feasibility studies for what should, could, or might fit well here. And that's how we arrived at the plan that is developing before you and that caused us to want to request the 1070 permit. We also looked at what could be done if we don't get a 1070 permit, because of course, that is something that we needed to consider. So this is a by right concept plan. I mentioned we're not asking for a land use plan amendment, we're not asking for a rezoning. So we're prepared to understand if your decision is to not grant the permit, and how could we develop this property then. Again, we wanted to be in keeping with the current zoning, CM, and that does allow for multifamily, as you've heard. So this is a plan that is developed with non-permit built upon area, 24%. And in order to make that work, we did, you can see the limits are smaller, and it's all multifamily, because that's able to be done much more compactly and still get the efficiencies needed to make the economics work. So this is the plan if we don't ask for the 1070. Now we're back full circle to where we started. This is what we'd like to do. This is the vision that the Fords have. This is what we've spent time with Stimmel. You can see we asked Stimmel to go ahead and show us what this one would look like. And it does exceed the 24%, but we think it does so in exact keeping with what the 1070 permit is provided to do. It is a mechanism provided by the Department of Environmental Quality so that towns like yourself can have an option, some flexibility in order to decide your land uses and what should go where in keeping with your comprehensive plans and your built environment. So we followed those documents, and we tried to deliver something that reasonably and responsibly brought those items to fruition. Now, I talked about this as a threshold approval, that's the beginning of a long process. It's essentially asking for permission to try. That's what it is. If this is granted tonight, it doesn't mean that tomorrow we get a CO or even a grading permit and that these buildings will go up. What it means is that we now get to go through all the rest of the process, knowing and understanding what the limits of the developable landscape are. So what do I mean when I say that? We've got to do a stream delineation. This is done by environmental engineers. They go out. We know there's an intermittent stream on the property. We know that from the USGS maps, but we need to know its exact extent. So that'll be delineated. That's done with the oversight of the state of North Carolina, specifically through the Army Corps of Engineers. So they're the ones who say, yes, that's what this is, move forward with that delineation being the understanding. Once it's delineated, we of course have to buffer it. Those are riparian buffers, also administered by DEQ. So that's a state requirement that has to be done. Importantly and notably, the 1070 permit does not allow you to be exempted from that. It's still out there. It's not a preclusion. It's not an end around. It just means that we get to study it the same as we would have for any other project. We also have to look at utilities, water and sewer. That's administered by Davie County. We need to know if there's capacity, availability, where is it? Because the developer would be the one to connect to it. We've actually done that work through Davie County. We do know, we have a will serve letter. They've studied the capacity, the availability. Our engineers know where the connections are. So we do know that we have that capacity and capability to connect to the utilities. Driveway permits, that's done through NCDOT. They'll have us do a traffic impact analysis. They'll want to know exactly what we're proposing to build here so that they can do a trip generation analysis. How many trips is this generating? And then they'll tell us what improvements that requires, what turn lanes, how long they have to be, are any signals warranted, where can you get a left turn, where can you get a right turn, how many ins and outs we need. So that is a process that's not negotiated. NCDOT says, here's what you do, and you say yes or no. That's how that works. So that's a process that is also forthcoming once we know exactly what we can put here. Site plan approval, that's done through the town, of course. Davie County administers your site plan applications, and that's where we look at grading, erosion control, stormwater protection, drainage. In other words, this impervious surface that we're talking about, whether it's 70% or 24%, when it drains and runs off, where is it going to go? So there is a development requirement. It's also administered by the state. It's what has to happen everywhere. It's called the pre and post rule. The stormwater runoff in the post-development scenario has to match the same runoff in the pre-development scenario. So how do we do that? Stormwater detention ponds. The impervious surface area has to be captured on site, treated, and released at the same rate as it was prior to development. So we know that, and our engineers prove that. They seal that, put their livelihood on it by doing these studies that are submitted with site plans approved and reviewed through Davie County on behalf of Bermuda Run. That's also where we check utility provisions and connections, roadway profiles, zoning and other development standards. And it's important to note that all of this is done by your experts, by your parties on your behalf. So our engineers prepare it, submit it, file it, and then it's checked by the appropriate experts for the town, the county, and sometimes the state in the case of those stormwater items. Next, if we get to keep going, again, we're still asking for permission to try with every step, is construction drawing approval. So that's where we're actually submitting for building permits to ask to go vertical. If those are issued, we do get to start seeing some vertical construction, and then we still have to ask for certificates of occupancy, CO, for anyone to actually get to come into the buildings. That's where once they're up and able to be walked in and inspected, again, your experts, the government experts come in and make sure that everything's been done correctly. All these, and there's obviously a lot of inspections along the way, but this final inspection for the CO is for occupancy. So people can live in the units or patron the commercial establishments. So I want to end there. We're going to hear a lot of comments tonight. I think you're going to hear questions about whether or not this is premature. Do we have enough information? Are the studies there? Is the requisite amount of detail there to make this decision? As I've just told you, I would submit to you that this is a process that that is at the beginning of a development sequence, and it allows us to continue giving you the proper information to issue all the other approvals. Tonight's request is not asking you to allow us to do all these things tomorrow. Is asking you to allow us to try to keep going. So, and we have submitted the requisite materials under Chapter 10, Article C. I believe it's Section 8 of your ordinance that prescribes, sets out, and details the requirements for this particular permit. All of that is in your possession. As we've just seen here tonight, that is the standard for the town to analyze and make a decision on one of these requests. So I'd submit to you that you do have the requisite information to make this threshold decision to see if we can keep going. I think you're going to hear that this request is environmentally problematic. Well, I would urge you to consider that it's actually a mechanism set out by our Department of Environmental Quality. They've recognized that sometimes it does make sense in your discretion and under your purview to allow this to happen. And I think the reason they're able to do that is because, as I noted, it doesn't preclude or exempt any of the hard and fast environmental regulations that are required of development. It doesn't mean that you can do anything with streams. It doesn't mean that you don't have to control for your stormwater runoff. It doesn't mean that you don't have to buffer and have your riparian buffers. So the environmental protections are not thrown out the window with the 1070 permit. They are very much still in play, and we will very much still have to pursue them. And if we can't, then that's the end of that particular try. We'll have to try another way. I think you might hear that there's been a lot of discrepancy or inconsistencies in how this plan is being shown. And I would submit to you that that's actually not true. That's the due diligence and the feasibility analysis that the applicants have undergone for the last 8 months. As you all know, we've had the ability to pause and reflect on this application longer than we otherwise would have while we waited for the audit. And so we wanted to use that time wisely. So we did go get the utility analysis done over at Davie County. That requires a plan to be submitted. The best practice, the standard operating procedure when you're asking for utility allocation is to ask for the worst case scenario. So what we asked for in that allocation, because we want to make sure that the utility entity actually has enough and they actually can serve this at its highest capacity that it could be, which again, we don't know yet because we still have all this ahead of us. So that analysis does show all apartments, all at 3 bedrooms. That's never what would happen, and we've committed to that in our conditions. But we asked for that in the sewer capacity because we want to know that the worst case scenario can be served, and it could. So it's not an inconsistency, it's a best management practice for allocating utilities. We also had an earlier plan. It showed a different access point. We've learned over the last year that that's not the desirable access point. So at great cost and time, we went and procured some more frontage. We've got another piece of land under contract now. That's why the Wake Forest Baptist Health was added to the application. We've changed the site plan. Stimmel redid it. That's the one that's before you today because we do want to run down another access point. We do want to see if we can make it work another way. So that's not an inconsistency. It's an adaptation and evolution and our response to trying to hear concerns and find another way to do things. So we're excited to hear the dialogue tonight. We appreciate all the discourse and interest. We look forward to answering the questions. But I hope that as we do that, we'll understand that this is a state-prescribed mechanism from our actual Environmental Protection Agency that is entrusted by our state to look out for these exact issues. And when used responsibly and reasonably and as an overlapping tool with your land planning devices, it can help guide your future growth and meet your town objectives in exactly the way that you set out when you make things like your comprehensive plan. So it's meant to be layered with all of your other devices. It's meant to be put through the process of your submittal requirements, which we have done, and then evaluated on the basis of those factual considerations. And we look forward to doing that tonight. I'm here. The team that I've introduced is here if you have any further questions.
So before we have you sit, any questions from Ms. Odium before we open up the public hearing? We will bring you back up at the end, but give the council an opportunity to ask any questions at this time.
Actually, I do. We had an area resident share her concern about the developer's sewer allocation request based on that 3-bedroom number. And, you know, obviously with 528 apartments, which you would be allowed to build, we would be looking at, is that 1,584 bedrooms and potentially that much more population. So again, I guess my question is, what you're saying is worst case scenario, if you don't get the 1070 allocation, is that the developer would want to have that amount of sewer allocation because they would build potentially up to 528 apartments, 3-bedroom apartments.
I would caveat that a fair amount. So if the 1070 permit were not to be granted and we did pursue the by right concept plan, that would be all multifamily. So that part of your statement is correct. However, it would not be all 3 bedrooms. That's just not, obviously we haven't done, we haven't sat down and done all the architecture, but that's just not a market that's feasible or desirable. Three-bedroom units are generally the least floor plan frequency in any apartment product. So again, that was done as a best management practice for allocating utilities.
So to follow up on that question, for the apartments, the multifamily that would be in the plan that the developer intends to build if given the 1070 allocation, can you state what the average number of bedrooms would be in that apartment situation?
I don't know. We're not to that level of detail. What I can state, and we've put it in a condition, is that that number would be reduced down to 280 as an absolute maximum.
Number of apartments, not number of
apart-
bedrooms.
That's right. I just wanted to, the equation changes significantly off the top in terms of number of units. We're only looking at 280 that could even be available to be three-bedroom. Of that mix, anecdotally, I see anywhere from 0 to about 7% that could be three-bedroom, if you're just looking at a nice market mix. But again, I have a lot of clients that don't like to do any three-bedrooms. So
There's
it's
simply not the demand for those.
There's not the demand, no ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I will now open the public hearing. Again, as a reminder, we're asking 3 minutes to speak. You'll get a yellow card or some form of a chime over here at 30 seconds, and then a red when time expires. Again, ask that you would address council with your comments, and the council, by procedure, does not take questions as part of that. So first on our sign-up sheet is Vera Williamson.
Excuse me while I get adjusted here. My name is Vera Williamson, and I live on Haywood Drive. In making this decision, you are balancing the developer's privilege of a 1070 against the rights of residents. The guidelines we've all agreed to follow when facing these kinds of questions are in the comprehensive plan. And I would direct you particularly to Plan Objectives 6 and 8. In those, you are encouraged to solicit information during the development process, like stormwater studies and traffic impact analysis. Both strategies are designated high priority, and the plan makes those the council's responsibility. My contention is that you do not yet have the information that comprehensive plan tells you is needed to make a wise development 1070 decision. And here's some information that would help. Please ask for an independent stormwater runoff study. These drone shots of Hall Walker show a headwater stream of Sheik's Creek, and that's according to Edgar Miller, who's the Yadkin River keeper. The stream is spring-fed, and with challenging topography, there is simply no way to build 500 units without significant environmental impacts to the Yadkin and stormwater runoff to surrounding areas. Please also ask for an independent traffic study. Among other problems, you can see in this drone shot of 801 that there will be 4 roads feeding onto 801 within a very short distance of both each other and of the hospital. A minimum of 1,300 cars a day, most trying to turn left onto 801. How is that going to work? Town staff say that stormwater and traffic studies aren't required before this 1070 vote, and I think you heard the lawyer talking about that. Supposedly, the Technical Review Committee and other agencies handle those things later. But we have already been down that road. We've made that mistake before. We had no studies in advance of the Ariston Apartment 1070 vote, and we know that stormwater runoff is a significant issue in this town. Nearly $70,000 has been spent in the last few years just to get stormwater studies for things like Warwick Place in Bermuda Run East. Let's learn from the past and do our homework in advance. With all due respect to the attorney, Bermuda Run elected the town council, not the Technical Review Committee and not any of the other agencies that she mentioned, to make wise decisions about development, especially one of this scale. Wise decisions require solid information in advance of the decision. One thing is clear. If you vote yes today, you cannot say, I'm sorry, there was simply nothing else that we could do. That is not yet true, because you have not yet followed the comprehensive plan roadmap, the roadmap that cost our community $50,000. Please follow it and defer this vote until there is a real effort made at due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Our next speaker, oh, I'll wait.
Sorry.
That's okay, take your time. Carl Carney.
Good evening. I live at 171 Boxwood Circle in Bermuda Run and have a business here in the Kenderton Business Park. I first became concerned about the availability of housing, affordable housing for I've got 4 children, 2 of which were graduating from college looking for somewhere to live, and then the third did not want to live here. She wanted to go somewhere else. But as my children were looking for somewhere to live, there's just not a whole lot of available housing for young people coming out of college. A starter home today is $300,000 to $400,000, and if you look around this community, it is very difficult to find something for them to live in. And once we lose them to Raleigh or Charlotte, a large percentage of them do not come back here. I also got 70 employees who live in this area, and a number of them would like to live closer to where we are, but they cannot find somewhere to live. And I like the project that is being proposed tonight. The 1070 rule, the developer is working on, you got 2 choices. You got choice A, which means you jam those apartments in a relatively small amount of area, 520 apartments possibly, on that really small area, or you allocate the 1070. And this is not like some nefarious end around undercover thing that we've done here with 1070. I deal with this all over the state of North Carolina. We build in every county in the state of North Carolina. We deal with this same rule. Every council who knows their community is given the discretion by the state of North Carolina to use this. And you used it very, very wisely to do Kenderton. I don't know how many people in this room live in Kenderton, but 3/4 of you would not be here had it not been for the 1070 rule being wisely allocated so that that project could happen. Otherwise, it'd never happen. And I think it's a wonderful community over there. DEQ audit that we recently had done, I know they pointed out a number of shortfalls on it, but at the end of the day, you actually found you have more acreage to use as the 1070 purview than you did before you started. Is that not correct? I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I believe that's true. You actually found out you were under allocated. You actually have more to allocate now than you realized you had. So it's not like you went out and just spent it all over the place, although your documentation could be better. I develop, again, all over the Southeast, especially in North Carolina. No one spends the money on a project they don't know if it's going to happen. Which one do you spend it on? The first one, which jams them in on the small piece of land, or do you spend it on the larger one? Traffic studies. All of the studies and all of the information that attorney mentioned that has to be done, you'll spend $500,000 to maybe $1 million on a project that you don't even know if it's going to happen. So no one does that on the front end. That's why these rules are in place, that you have to meet them as you go. Sheetz, Chick-fil-A, all the people that are here, the Department of Transportation, all the road work that's been put in place, they didn't come here because they think it's going to be flowers and cows over there. I mean, this neighborhood is in the perfect spot across from Baptist Medical Center to build quality housing spread out over an area that will be an asset to our community. So, thank you. I'm very much in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Next speaker, Dan Borland.
Good evening again, Dan Borland, 346 Yadkin Valley Road, and I wanted to make comments about this 1070 aspect, and there's a couple items. Yes, 1070 has state approval that it can be used. We did find there are some improvements that could and should be made in terms of how Bermuda Run considers 1070 requests. I think that's actually important, and it's important for this request especially. Intermittent streams, we now have 1,000-year, so to speak, rains. They come more often than 1,000 years. So we are having increased runoff, and it especially increases as building goes. So an intermittent stream is going to become permanent, and it might become permanent pretty fast. Retaining ponds do the trick. They also can be considered as a hazard for small children. And that needs to be considered. And so for the council, you have a delicate balance here tonight. And I think what I am asking is that we be on the conservative side. And I see that as protecting the watershed. And that does not mean I'm against development in any way. People need to live somewhere. This is a very important consideration. And we want this to be a place where people live. There is no doubt. There was additional acreage found through the audit, and my view on that is this is not an opportunity for further 1070 development. This is an opportunity to protect more acres in the watershed, and that's my thoughts on that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borland. Next speaker, Beth Borland.
Hey, I'm Beth. I'm with Dan. You get the scientific points from him. He's a scientist. Homemaker. I came out here to live in a beautiful place, point of view from me. And that's what I want to say. I have lots of notes, but what I want to say is we moved out from 25 years in the city out here because charming words will just be cows and farms. We're okay with cows and farms. Anyway, that sort of was what was spoken, what we learned, and how we came out here. So in preparation for this meeting, I texted or emailed Melinda because I knew her face, and I asked her for the DOT report. Well, how's traffic going to be impacted? And I asked her for stormwater. How's runoff going to be impacted? Oh, got to talk to you. Sorry. She didn't have that information, so she passed it on to Mr. Meadwell, and I want to read to you the response that I got from him. Kind, quickly, immediate, but I was entirely perplexed because I just didn't know how it all worked. Good afternoon, Mrs. Borland. I apologize for not getting back to you sooner. He got back to me that day. It was great. I've been tied up in meetings most of the day. This is what caught me off guard. The town did not request North Carolina DOT to prepare a traffic study for 801, 158, or 40 interchanges. Now, DOT may request a study from the developer as part of the street driveway access permit to the state-maintained road. Also, the applicant has submitted an engineer certification addressing stormwater as part of their application. A stormwater study is not required as part of the requested application. Okay, now see, here's my mom, homemaker, love the place concern. I thought I was trusting you, and I am, to guard and guide and preserve and shepherd the charm of this community. So I was very perplexed. I was saddened. I was crabby, own it, that you all hadn't requested, what's this going to do with traffic? I'm on Yadkin Valley Road with Dan. Chick-fil-A has changed how I get out onto the highway. We have basically one big intersection. And you all haven't even, I'm sorry if it was $50,000, I didn't know that, requested a traffic study to kind of figure out how we're all going to live well with each other. So I'm just asking, Vera was much more articulate than I, that you study this, get the information for stormwater, for runoff, for traffic, before you make a decision to change the charm, the cows and the farms, I love it, kind of place of where we live. We're not all behind a gate. We're not all in a place where we have protection. And I am asking you to shepherd that protection, to guard us, to guide us, and the charm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borland. Okay, I need to call an audible here real quick. So I've got a Matt Belford, but I've got an asterisk beside. Okay. So you had someone sign your name on your behalf?
My other half.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Thank you. Matt Belford on Yadkin Valley Road. I have my little packet here. In April of 2023, way in ancient history, when this was approved by this council, there were several great quotes in the media at the time from feedback from 585 residents at the time. At the time, right up in the front in the introduction, it points out that Bermuda Run is 70% single-family residential. Suddenly, with Ariston, Comet, and then what we're discussing tonight, our community will be radically changed from ancient history to present. Is this a lack of community feedback? Is this that we haven't shown up? We had a meeting in August with 300 people in the room. I would wager, I don't have any data on this, that most of those people were not there because they were excited about subsidized apartments. As I made the point at that time, at that meeting, if this was a single-family development, if this was just going to be a bunch of houses, we wouldn't be here tonight. We wouldn't be having this conversation. As Vera astutely pointed out, your plan recommends, studies on transportation, stormwater annexation. Multiple people have made this. Where are those studies? They look like hollow words on paper in this when we go forward looking at this. I have significant concerns based on the accounting principles that Erin has already laid out. Most importantly, if you sit back and look at very comprehensive, nice data from the U.S. Census Bureau, all we need to do is some math, okay? This proposed development is more dense than all of Bermuda Run gated. This development is more dense than Kinderton Village. This changes the dynamics of the community that we have. This puts our housing density closer to that of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Not even above, we're well above Louisville, we're well above Clemens, okay? We're a small parcel, and now we're packing a lot of places in here, including apartments. What before the council tonight is an opportunity to continue to avoid cementing Bermuda Run as a single-family housing where we are the minority, where this is a majority apartment, where this is a majority multifamily, which is a dramatic change from the community that we all moved into and you all wrote about just a year ago. The lawyer used the word discretion. This is yours. This is your discretion, as she mentioned, to protect us, the voters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Belford.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just one point. The word subsidized housing was used. I caution the council, we've talked about this ad nauseum. We do not make decisions based upon who resides somewhere. That is a violation of the North Carolina State Fair Housing Act. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next speaker, Elizabeth Hutcherson. I hope I got that right.
Good evening. Despite being told that the Hall Walker development is an inevitability and that this council's hands are tied, the vote tonight is in fact very important to everyone in the town of Bermuda Run. If the council votes to allow the 1070 exemption, the development can be built on 42 of the 60 acres allocated in the watershed. However, with a no vote, only 15 of the 60 acres in the watershed can be built upon. That's a significant difference and represents a powerful arrow in the council's quiver, despite being told that they are indeed powerless. I'd like to start by addressing the accuracy of the 1070 application, then back up and walk through the chronology of the events that brought us to tonight's vote. In the application included in tonight's agenda, the developer has listed 45 acres as the total project area. However, total project area is defined as total acreage in the watershed area, or 60 acres, not 45. So even now, the application is inaccurate. Interestingly, in the very same application, total acreage is used when calculating the 8 units per acre to get to the 505 units they want to build. This inconsistency of acreage used is disappointing to say the least, as I think we would all agree that the applicant should pick one lane or the other and stay in it and not waffle, whichever one garners the most advantage. In May of 2023, the Hall Walker parcel of land, which was previously ineligible to even receive a 1070 exemption, was approved via text amendment to the zoning ordinances to allow for such an exemption. I believe this was long before anyone around here even knew what the words 1070 meant. In July of 2023, a public hearing to apply for the very 1070 exemption that had just been conveniently made 2 months before was scheduled, and then postponed based upon the size of the crowd. In August of 2023, over 300 residents in a town of 3,000 showed up to voice their concerns, along with the concerns over the accuracy of the allowable acreage in the 1070 bank, which led to the DEQ audit, which was completed on February 28th. On February 29th, the developer closed on the land 1 day after the audit came back. Clearly, the 1070 was very important to them. Of course it's important because of the difference in the acreage I just mentioned at the beginning, 15 versus 42 acres available. That totally changes the economics of the project. So here we are with an inaccurate and careless application with incomplete information, a financial impact page with unsubstantiated annual expense numbers, depreciation numbers with no capital outlays to go with them, a project which is described as both moderate and high density within the same application, no traffic study, no independent water study. I urge you to pump the brakes and gather thorough, accurate information before approving this project, which will forever change the landscape of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchison. Our next speaker, Aaron De Niro.
Hello again, Aaron Zanero, 147 Haywood Drive. My parcel abuts the Hall Walker property, and I'm hoping my perspective as a homeowner that will have to live with the consequences of this development will carry a little more weight than other perspectives or opinions about what kind of development is the best kind of development in this situation, or the false choice that we keep hearing about, A versus B. When I moved to Davie County in 2011, this open parcel, the Hall Walker property next to my property, was zoned open space. It's now zoned residential mix. The land use for the parcel was open space. Now it's both Crossroads commercial and some village residential. This body seems intent on allowing everything but the type of development outlined in the comprehensive plan to go on this parcel. So be it. If the greater Bermuda Run area weren't so wonderful, I'd be arguing about a colossal bait and switch that this town has perpetrated, but instead I want to appeal to your common sense. Current impervious development in the watershed is limited to 24%. In this parcel, that's about 15 acres. In an already distressed watershed with widespread water runoff issues, both in this area and in other areas within the watershed, this should be a no-brainer to turn down this application. Less impervious area is better than more impervious area. In this case, 15 acres versus 35 to 40 being requested is, again, a no-brainer. Take the map of the development and put your hand over half of it or more. It cuts the footprint of an impervious area in a distressed watershed by more than half. Again, this should be a no-brainer. I'm not anti-development, and in this case, some sort of development will obviously progress. The developer just spoke eloquently over all the due diligence and the studies that need to be done. Let's see how all the watershed and traffic studies go for a 15-acre development before we rubber stamp, green light an area development 3 times as much. There's no reason to make special allowances, so clearly inadequately unvetted and under-researched in a distressed watershed area. Please deny the 1070 request before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nero. Next, Teresa Snyder. Teresa Snyder, she might be in the back room there. Thank you. Let the record show that Teresa also has an asterisk beside her name. We're not calling her out specifically, but I'm just saying. No.
Please, I'm good. I'm good to go. We had asked the Yadkin River Keeper to come and weigh in on this. He was unable to come, so he sent a letter, and I got it last minute. There's a little bit on here that I can't pronounce, but if you'll bear with me, and I'll leave a copy for the records. He said, "Dear council members, the Yadkin River Keeper is a 501c environmental advocacy organization whose mission is to protect and enhance the Yadkin River and its tributaries that provide drinking water for more than 1 million North Carolinians. Several Yadkin River Keeper members in the community contacted us to make me aware of the proposed 1070 petition requested by Bermuda Run Investments for the Waffers Retreat development. Yadkin River Keeper is opposed to the request as we believe it will have negative impacts on water quality." And let me repeat that. He said they are opposed to the request as it will have negative impacts on water quality in Sheep Creek and the river and could lead to increased flooding and other unintended consequences. "We understand the logic of concentrating development, but this is not the place to do it." He said, "As you know, the site is in an area zoned as a water supply watershed protection area and is bisected by an unnamed tributary to Sheep Creek, also classified as a water supply number 4 stream. The tributary draining the property hits Sheep Creek about 1 mile from its confluence with the Yadkin River, also classified as a water supply number 4 segment due to its proximity to Davie County water supply intake, just upriver in Winston-Salem's water intake downriver." And I hate he's not here to tell you all this. He said, "But not only is the tributary considered jurisdictional waters by the United States Army Corps of Engineers, but it also contains 7 small streamside wetlands that are critical to absorbing and limiting stormwater runoff and pollutants into the stream." He said, "It's my understanding the developer has not applied for a Section 401 or 404 permit under the Federal Clean Water Act, although it appears that some of the high-density built-upon areas," I'm sure he saw the plans, "would be on top of the stream, which Yadkin River Keeper considers a headwater stream. It would be helpful to better understand the developer's plans in this regard. Assuming the developer will apply for necessary permits if they're going to have impacts on the streams and wetlands, this could trigger other environmental reviews, such as an inventory of endangered species and historical artifacts on the site. In addition to the potential negative impacts on water quality, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's information for planning and consultation,"
Please continue.
okay, or IPAC website, "the property may contain several endangered or threatened species, including tricolor bats, monarch butterflies, there's a sumac that I can't pronounce, and a sunflower I can't pronounce." He said, "Lastly, there doesn't appear to be an engineer certification, or at least we haven't seen one as required by 10.1C of the zoning's ordinance to verify that there'll be no post-construction increase in stormwater," and I think that was turned in. So I'll bypass that. Yadkin River's Roadmap to a Cleaner Yadkin, published in 2020, identified this subbasin, the Carter Creek-Yadkin River watershed, as the 23rd most stressed subbasin for non-point source pollution above the High Rock Lake out of 127 subbasins. So that's kind of critical. Additional research conducted by the Center for Watershed Protection, who reviewed 35 studies on the impact of impervious cover on aquatic ecosystems, indicates that fish and other aquatic life are negatively impacted by IC, impervious cover, starting at 10 to 15%, and even lower in some cases. At 25%, the stream can no longer support aquatic life. That's why the Yadkin River Keeper is advocating for much lower built-upon percentages other than the current 24% to protect water quality throughout the watershed. maintain aquatic ecosystems, and reduce flooding. That's another reason we oppose the 1070 petition for the Walker's Retreat and encourage the council to not approve it or at least seek more information on the impact of the project on our national resources. And he said, thank you for your consideration. And I'll leave a copy. Is that okay?
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Our next speaker, Monica Belford.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I live at 113 Oakwind Drive, and I'm in condo number 301. Hearing that I'm in a condo, you may think that I would be in favor of apartments, because a lot of times people confuse condos with apartments. I am in favor of affordable housing, but I'm not in favor of what these presenters tonight are halfway presenting to you to ask you to approve. I work at Davidson Davie Community College, and I help with construction classes. I'm a weekly volunteer with our wonderful new Habitat for Humanity group around the corner. And I believe that there are options for how you all decide to vote, which is as we elected you to vote, as we are asking you to vote, which was also brought to your attention when we heard about other apartments at, or proposed apartments at the Calvary Church, was 2 years ago maybe. I have questions. What are we doing at this moment that we're helping our future neighbors prepare for their financial success? I was lucky in that I was able to buy my own home and then finally move here to be within walking distance of my brother's house. The question here is about density, and also doing your homework before asking for something being approved, but the main question is density, which has come up over and over and over again. And we've come out over and over and over again to ask you, please do not vote in favor of high density. I'm in favor of affordable housing. I do realize that is a need, but we have options that would also benefit our fellow neighbors. We can work together to build homes. We don't have to sell out to a company. I do understand the economics that they're trying to make the most out of their money. I don't understand how their presentation said that they would be 4 stories when we just voted a few weeks ago that we would only be at 3 stories. I would say that you all are in a position, as you know, of power, and you're able to choose how future generations are affected. We can help the nature and the environment by building neighborhoods with homes. And like my brother said in a couple meetings ago, if this was a proposal about single-family homes, we could meet in the bathroom, because people don't really mind about that. This is affecting current homeowners' home values, just as the other presenters expressed. You have the power to help them keep their home value. This is affecting future generations. We have the power as a community to work together and use our 501c3 neighbor here of Habitat for Humanity and build homes that would give people equity in their future. I vote for that. I also vote that you remember what one of the other neighbors said when we were at Calvary Church. Maybe we need to change the name, Bermuda Run to Bermuda Rents. I'm not in favor of that. I don't think you all should be either, because it's not financially viable for us when we're looking at the economics of many people versus the economics of few investors. I also would like to not have to buy T-shirts that say Schitt's Creek on them instead of Sheik's Creek. We've had plenty of comments about the environment. I mean, that show was hilarious, but I don't really want to have to refer to Bermuda Run as Schitt's Creek. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Belford. All right, I will now close the public hearing. That was the last speaker. Thank you for all the speakers. I will now ask Ms.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I am signed up for this portion of my name.
I'm sorry?
I signed up.
No, ma'am, I'm looking at the list. I'm sorry?
She signed for the annexation.
Did you mean to sign up for this one? Okay. No, that's fine. So can you state your name, and then I'll remove you from the other and add you to this one?
Patricia Williams.
Okay, I should know that.
My confusion may be because I was not prepared to work on one specific part of this session. I do applaud that you are doing videos of your meetings. That transparency is so important. It's very important that things like that should be given to your citizen employers. Density, clogged intersections, more traffic. Does that sound familiar? We've been here before, not too long ago. More does not equal better. Progressing as the human species can mean no tree loss especially, larger plots for homes, clean air. Look at the future, not the present. When I moved to Kenderton 12 years ago, it was a beautiful place. It's still beautiful, but it's changed a lot since then. It was quiet. It's no longer quiet. We have extra interstate lanes. We've lost trees to buffer us from the interstate. It has changed completely. I go outside in the morning with my dogs about between 7 and 7:30, and it sounds like Patton and his Third Army are coming through my yard. That's the noise level that we have now. We kept hearing about this being a Norman Rockwell community. I went back and looked at Norman Rockwell pictures. I haven't seen any high-rises, any cars, but lots of trees, lots of greenery, small houses, happy people. That's what our future should look like. Not busy, busy, busy. Progress does not mean more. Less is better. The lady who spoke about the farm is very correct about this being the farm area. This was what we came to. We are disappointed that it's come to this now. And we're facing the same issue again that we worked so hard again. Density is the biggest thing. How many cars are going to be in this park, in this area? How many cars are going to come through that one area right near Kenderton, the route we have out? It's going to be very different. I urge you to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. All right, I'll go ahead and ask the question just in case. So do we have anyone else who signed up on the yellow one that meant to sign up on the not yellow one? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay. All right, now I'll close the public hearing. All right, I'll ask Ms. Hutterin to return, and if we can, maybe about 5 minutes, and then I'll turn it over to council for any questions, if you could, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again to everyone who came out tonight and shared those thoughts with us. It's always nice to know exactly what everyone's thinking and be able to address that. So I want to quickly, in 5 minutes or so, address sort of some big themes I heard. And what I want to first start with is to, again, focus our conversation on why we're here tonight, and then the obvious flip side of that is why we're not here. I heard a lot about density and about land use form, farms versus something built, be it apartments or something else. And again, I want to reiterate, we're not asking for a rezoning or a land use plan amendment. The density has been set, the use has been set since my clients ever came to the table. I don't know about any kind of rezoning in 2023, if I heard that date stated correctly. We had the property under contract at that point, so if I did hear that date correctly, I can certainly speak to the inaccuracy of that timing. So the CM zoning has been established for as long as we know the history of this property, and as long as we've been examining its feasibility and development potential. And we've always looked at it under that zoning and under the land use plan designation that I talked about in my presentation. And again, that's important, that those documents are utilized by folks who want to come and develop in the town of Bermuda Run. And importantly, I think a good developer takes that into account and tries to stay within that. And that's exactly what has happened this time. So tonight's question isn't about density or land use form, rather it's about what shape it takes, literally what shape. Is it going to be the 24% narrower footprint? Somebody said that, and they were exactly right. That is what this is about. Or is it the wider footprint, more impervious surface, within reason, with your discretion, that would allow us to build the plan that matches your comprehensive plan goals and objectives, the strategy that you've set out for yourself of how to grow? So looking at that, as I heard all the items that our neighbors would consider you to look at and would hope that the town considers and evaluates as development goes forward, it struck me that, there's really not a lot of disagreement. All of those things are important, and all of those things are absolutely going to happen. The difference we have is when. And as I stated before, this is a threshold decision that tells us what to study. For example, let's talk about the environmental permits that were mentioned in the Riverkeeper's letter. A 401 or a 404 permit evaluates impacts. It gives you a permit to impact a stream corridor. So we don't know what those impacts are unless we know what our design is. We literally don't know what permit to apply for unless we have a design. We don't know what our design is unless we know we can disturb 24 acres, or 24% of the acreage, or the 52%, looking at the total parcel acreage calculation. So that's just one example of why things need to go in a certain order. One metaphor that comes to mind for me is if you were planning an event, a dinner party or a wedding or something, you wouldn't go order all the food and set the catering allocations before you knew your guest list. I don't know if that metaphor resonates for you. It's like building a house. You wouldn't issue a CO for a house that you don't know how many bedrooms it has or what the internal plumbing looks like. So we're just trying to go in order, however you want to think about that and however that resonates. Also wanted to talk about the fact that this is not your last chance to look at this and impact it and put your thumbprint on it. The town of Bermuda Run acts in many capacities to be efficient and to properly, authorize and act on the discretion and the power and the police powers that you're given. As the town council, you utilize proper channels to do so. You act through the different agencies that are your companions in administering the governmental rules and regulations. So I don't think that it's a derelict delegation of your duties to ask the experts at the Corps of Engineers where the streams are, to ask the experts at NCDOT where they think a driveway permit can safely be issued. That is the process. That is a process for a reason. It's the right people who work on your behalf and the citizenry's behalf to make those decisions, and those are the folks that we will go through. As it turns out, again, just to reiterate the point that we agree these are important considerations, we've actually done a lot of these studies. When you do due diligence on a piece of real estate and you're doing feasibility analysis, certainly you want to know, is there a higher chance than not that this is going to work out, that something's going to be feasible here? So my clients have actually done a traffic study and submitted it to NCDOT. That traffic study was approved for access on Yadkin Valley. They went back and amended and submitted a supplemental traffic study to look at access on 801 instead. So they are looking at these things. They do care. They do know they're important. And at the proper time, when that information's ready to be evaluated, because we know what plan it goes with, all those studies will be utilized as part of the actual development approvals. Same with the stream delineation. We've had our environmental scientists out there. We know where the streams are. We just don't know what plan to put it on the plans for and submit it to a civil engineer reviewer who works for the town because we don't know the layout yet. Again, because we're trying to ask tonight for permission of which plan to pursue. You're not powerless. This is about choice. And we simply are asking for the administration of that discretion and submitting to you that the choice would overlap with and align with your comprehensive plan and strategic planning goals. You as a town council are charged not only with all the things you've heard about tonight, but also with directing growth and development and how you get to that betterment of life and just being that we've heard about. And part of that is growing the way you want to grow. Your comprehensive plan is the document that expresses that, not only for your constituents and for yourselves, but for those looking to come here. So when we follow that and we try to bring you something that conforms with that, I think the question becomes, how do we best do that? Not if that was the right decision or not. And that's what we'd like to focus on tonight. and we're still here for questions as you deliberate. Thank you.
Yeah, just if you'll stay put there,
Yes,
if
sir.
you don't mind. So,
Now, I have a question, moment of clarification. First of all, thank you so much, everybody, for all the comments and observations. So my question is a moment of clarification because it was mentioned that in January, we approved a height of 3 stories, and the voluntary conditions are 4 stories. And there is an explanation that I believe, but I just wanted to address that and clarify
Yes,
that.
thank you for that question. So the reason for that, the 4-story condition is actually a commitment to restrict what would otherwise be allowed for this particular project under the North Carolina statutory permit choice rule. So what that is, it's a statutory provision that allows applicants the protection of the rules that were in place when they first made application. So in our case, the rules that were in place when we initially applied were for 5-story multifamily allowances. So the commitment to only build 4 stories actually precludes us from the 5 stories that would be available to us under that permit choice protection.
So you're essentially grandfathered in, you could be building to 5 stories, but the voluntary conditions you're offering are 4 stories. Is that
It's
correct?
not a grandfathering, but I
Okay,
understand.
I'm sorry about
Yeah,
the terminology.
Yes, ma'am. I think
But
that's a fair assessment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your question.
I have a question, and thank you all for being here tonight. It's been an interesting night, and I thank you all for coming out. I wanted to, for you to reiterate what your mitigation measures are going to be that will lessen the impact to the existing neighborhoods.
The mitigation, I assume you're talking about the buffering? Are you talking about the buffering?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It might be best just to, is it still here? Is it still here? So I'll talk from memory, and then maybe we can get the presentation back up. So there was 2 different conditions about buffering. One was expressing the buffers that would be required. I believe they were 30 feet that would be required between any non-residential component or a multifamily residential component and other residentially used property. So that's a separation for things that are not like to like adjacent uses. And then we went above and beyond that with a second buffering condition that actually committed to, I think it was a 15-foot wide evergreen screening with certain plantings that were called out, or a fence to separate actual like uses, which you don't often see residential to residential being buffered in that nature, but we went ahead and wanted to provide that just to give that additional screening and buffering privacy to our neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you
for clarifying that.
So Amanda, thank you. Thank you guys for your comments tonight as well. Is there a desired outcome as far as the timing on the development? Is it phased in? Is it just the complete development? Do we have a desired completion date whether you get to 1070 or not? Is there some kind of development plan you guys or timeline you guys are working against?
So certainly, my clients have closed on the property. They own it now. There are carrying costs, so certainly they'd like to get started with something. It would be phased, of course, starting at the access point once we know what that is, and as DOT tells us where we can get access, and we would work from that back. A product of this size, I would say, 4 phases at least?
Well, at least 2.
Two to four phases. And that would be determined, I think, a lot by if it's one land use type or not. Certainly, if an apartment builder was coming in, they get an economy of scale going once they get everything mobilized. It might be easier to do it all in one fell swoop versus if you have different types of housing options going up, you could certainly see that phasing more easily. But yes, the goal would be to get started right away. Of course, it's a very long process, as we've touched on tonight. So this isn't something that could start moving dirt tomorrow. But yes, the goal would be to keep proceeding step by step. And I can certainly call up some other folks who might have a more specific
I was just
answer.
curious on the timeline, what you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, I'll open this item for council.
I make a motion that we move forward with the 1070 allocation for the Hall Walker project.
Let me, with the conditions as documented.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And I will second that motion.
Motion by Seliga, second by Schaefer. Council? All in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to public hearing number 3, annexation request. Ask for Ms. Hodering to return to provide any context around this or not. It's really more open to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief here. This is what we hope, we see this as the natural progression for this property. Of course, it's been in your planning jurisdiction. It's in your zoning jurisdiction, as you've heard from me tonight. You've got long-range plans and strategic goals for it that we're looking to accommodate. So we would love and are excited to be a part of the Bermuda Run community. We have submitted annexation analysis that was evaluated by staff that looks at things like, can this be served by all the required elements of your town government if it were to be annexed? All those answers were yes, and so we would look to receive your favorable approval to officially become part of the town of Bermuda Run, since we will be developing under all of your ordinances and regulations.
Any questions before I open the public hearing? Nope. Thank you. All right, I'll now open the public hearing. Again, as a reminder, 3 minutes to speak. Yellow at 30 seconds, red, time expires. Address the council, please, and no questions. First on the list, Paul Dixon.
My name is Paul Dixon, 120 Kilbourne Drive in Kinderton Village. I want to thank the mayor, town manager, and town council for holding this hearing regarding the Hall Walker apartment and townhome project. I've talked to many of the town council members in the past. I am not opposed to development, but it should be well planned and always be for the good of the town and the community. Why is it always these huge apartment complexes and not single-family homes and neighborhoods? I'm here tonight to voice my concerns about the Hall Walker project, as I do not see this as being a good project for the town, and especially for the residents north of I-40. My concerns are based on the following: the large increase in population, especially on the north side of I-40, the increase in traffic. Our roads are not ready for this. I've watched the intersection of 158 and Highway 801 for 8 years now, including this evening. Are we going to create a problem on the north side of I-40 that is similar or worse? Are we ready for the increase in the number of students in our schools? I think this was brought up 2 years ago as well. Are we ready for the increased need of law enforcement in our town and community? What will be the impact on our homes by having 500 rental homes here? What will this do to our home values today, in 5 years, and 10 years? The impact on the environment, watersheds, water runoff, etc., has this been studied thoroughly? Again, what will be the impact now and later? The signs posted north of I-40 say, show us a plan, and this is what we are asking tonight. We need to know, where are the studies on all these issues? Not after the project is already underway or completed, and it cannot be changed. I ask the council to either vote against or defer this annexation and take time to study all the implications of this project before it is too late. The people here tonight are the ones that must live with your decisions for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Next speaker, Elizabeth Hutcherson.
evening. I just wanted to go on record tonight of questioning the zoning. I know that we've heard that the land is appropriately zoned for the use that's been described, but I wanted to read again, I know we've read once the definition of commercial mixed, but I wanted to read it one time and just think about this a second. Commercial mixed district is provided to allow for the location of retail, services, offices, and civic uses essential to the everyday needs of town residents. Residential uses may be dispersed amongst these uses as part of mixed-use buildings or multifamily residential development. That doesn't sound like a 500-unit multifamily development to me, but that's how the land is zoned. Now, then we talked about land use. I know that Amanda said that it was mixed use, but that was part of a 2017 plan. In 2023, it was changed to Crossroads Commercial. And Crossroads Commercial doesn't provide for residential use. So I'm really confused how without a zoning change, we are having this land accommodate 500 units of multifamily housing. To me, it seems like de facto rezoning. So I just wanted to go on record tonight as saying, I believe this is not zoned appropriately. So, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. Next speaker, Jim Fulgham. Jim Fulgham, could you check in there if he's in the other, oh, nice job, Jim, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Town Council. We've heard the word important and critical several times tonight. I want to bring up some points that I have not heard. There may have been some backroom discussion. As Bermuda Run considers annexing Hall Walker property, assessing the town's capacity to provide infrastructure and services to the area is crucial, especially given the proposed development plans. Let's review key factors to consider. Assessing fire and police protection. Evaluating the town's police and fire service is crucial for ensuring safety in the annexed area. This involves analyzing personnel numbers, patrol coverage, response times, and crime rates in both current and proposed boundaries. Additional resources may be necessary, such as more officers, new precincts, or upgraded equipment. Fire protection is equally vital. Reviewing fire department capabilities and potential expanding resources is essential for effective coverage. Emergency medical services, EMS. In annexing planning, it's crucial to consider ambulance services and paramedic response. Bermuda Run should assess EMS resources, including ambulance stations, EMTs, and medical facilities. Adjustments to EMS infrastructures may be needed for timely medical care in the annexed area. Other essential services. Additionally, Bermuda Run must also address other essential services such as street maintenance, waste management, parks, recreational facilities, and administration services. Assessing the capacity to meet annex areas' needs is crucial for maintaining resident quality of life. Financial implications. It's crucial to acknowledge the financial impacts of annexation on the town's budget. While annexation may expand the tax base, there are costs against expected revenues. Consider potential challenges like property values, depreciations, increased service demand, and infrastructure needs. Long-term financial planning is essential for Bermuda Run's fiscal sustainability during annexation. In conclusion, annexing the Hall Walker property into Bermuda Run requires thorough planning and assessment to guarantee adequate infrastructure and services, open public awareness. And discussions are crucial, especially given the proposed development of 500+ units on the property. Above all, these are the crucial points that I have not heard in this discussion tonight. Thank you for allowing my time to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Fulgham. All our last speaker, Charlene Genoway.
My name is Charlene Genoway. I live at 150 Brookstone Drive in Kinderton Village. As I have been here about annexation before, you just passed the 1070. Correct, we couldn't consider the density as the problem, even though we don't like the density. Watershed is a problem. It's being ignored. Annexing something this large, bringing in potentially 1,000 more residents to our 3,200, you will have more expenses. I don't think the tax revenue will cover that because you have so many residential homes that you're getting tax revenue from that are not covering what needs to be done, what you already have. Would love to hear what the benefits are for the residents of Bermuda Run, annexing 1,000 more people when you can't service what you have. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Genoway. Before I ask her to come back up, let me ask, are there any questions that we would have for Ms. Woodian? No. Okay. All right, I will now close the public hearing. Council, I'll open this item up for discussion
Is she gonna,
or a motion.
she's not gonna rebut? Okay. I'll move for the annexation.
Do you want to hear her rebut? Is there something you
No,
want to ask her?
I thought he asked for a motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Schaefer, second by Ms. Nelson. All those in favor, show of hands. 5-0. Moving on to item number 9, Town Manager Report. Comments? I have nothing to report. Okay, thank you. Okay, Mayor's comments. I will, shockingly, I'll be brief. First of all, thank you everyone who attended tonight, who spoke. I know it takes courage and I know it takes energy, and I will tell you on behalf of myself and council, it's very meaningful to have each and every one of you here tonight to speak and to present your views. It's tremendously valuable. I also want to say to council, Mr. Meadwell, Mr. Williams, to Cindy and Dora, I want to thank all of you for your hard work, your professionalism, your willingness to engage many of our residents in various meetings, coffees, chats, what have you. That means a lot to me, and I appreciate that partnership. And I'm proud to be a part of this dais. For our May 14th Town Council meeting, Sheriff J.D. Hartman will be joining, presenting and speaking. Many of you come to those because they're very enlightening, sharing data, sharing information, taking questions from council. So I encourage you to join us for that on May 14th. Also, as a reminder, this Saturday, April 13th, but you were going to say that, weren't you? I knew you were. Saturday, April 13th, the shredding event, sponsored by the Bermuda Run Garden Club, right here, just outside in our parking lot area from 9 a.m. to noon. I think it's $5 a box or $5 a bag.
A bag.
Okay, I got clarification on that. And feel free to give more than 5 if you'd like. That's all I have. Any closing comments by council?
I would just say thank you for all the residents to come out, and as you all outlined, we're residents of Bermuda Run as well. I would encourage you, if you're this passionate, to get involved in public service because it's not always fun and it's kind of hard. But you ought to get involved in it. If you really want to get out here and get at it, we'd love to have you help. But thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your thoughts. So,
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second. Second.
All those in favor?
Favor.
Hi.
Okay, thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.